hi. Oh, there's the real thing, the memory eaters.
Hi.
Beautiful.
Hi.
Wow. Well, congratulations on your book.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me. This is so great to listen to. I really enjoyed listening to Mary and Marisa.
Oh,
And that article about the 80s videos, I read that.
oh,
I didn't know it was Marisa.
well, there
And
you
that's
go.
a great article, and I haven't done my 80s videos yet, but I'm planning on it.
I haven't either. I haven't either, but that might be fun. That might be a fun way to pass the time today.
Yeah, I think so.
So tell everybody about your book.
So, The Memory Eaters is a lyric memoir in essays. And by lyric, that means it's kind of non-linear, but it deals with forgetting, memory, homelessness, escape, different forms of escape, which is relevant for us all now, and nostalgia. And also New York City in the 1970s and 80s, and a kind of glamorous, exciting upbringing that I had there with my mother, who was a fashion model, a single mother, and a Seventh Avenue fashion model. And later in life, my mother continued to be eccentric and really charming and interesting and beautiful, but she also came down with Alzheimer's and ultimately passed away. So the book is somewhat of a narrative of caretaking her while also helping my sister who was living with her and suffering from addiction. And and then also kind of retreating into nostalgia and pleasant memories, even maybe overly optimistic memories of the past of this kind of gritty time in New York in the 70s and 80s, and kind of examining the paradox of that romanticism.
I found it so moving that in so many scenes with your mom, she would say to you, like apropos of nothing, that she was so proud of you. And she couldn't even, it was just so sweet because it's like she didn't even know your name half the time. She didn't know her name half the time, but yet she could feel how proud she was. And like, that's so nice. I don't know.
It was really sweet. While I was writing the book, I had an excerpt published in the New York Times, and it was pretty early in the condition for her. She still couldn't really, read the article or understand it, but she was so excited about it, and she put the article over her desk and talked about it all the time, um, much to my sister's annoyance. But it was really sweet. Yeah,
Aw. And it was
yeah.
so interesting too how when you were going through all of the records and files and everything, all the things that kept popping up and the things that you even say that you missed even by omission, like things from the divorce trial and just so
Mm.
many like little things that you've discovered in like empty Scrabble boxes. And I mean, it was really like kind of a haunting, not haunting because that sounds negative, but really like moving. It was just really moving the way that all unfolded in your book.
Thank you so much. I mean, the book did wind up being a kind of a quest because when my mother wound up having Alzheimer's, it seemed like there was kind of a natural progression, and she'd always been very distant. And when I started to do research about it in my own life, when I actually suffered from PTSD and dissociation, I started to kind of probe why my mother had seemed traumatized and dissociated. And I started kind of following clues and picking up on how there were certain stories that her family would always tell that were either not true or not really that relevant. And then it turned out they were sort of hiding other stories. And so it took me years and years. And I'd done some of the research before my mother had Alzheimer's, but it wasn't until afterwards that I started to see the connections and really get at the secrets. So it wound up, I don't want to spoil it too much, but there wound up being a family secret that I uncovered after it was too late to ask my mother about it, that was really kind of tragic and had stigmatized her whole life and traumatized her. So I felt really emboldened that the book was able to kind of dispel the secret, which was really unfair, and absolve my mother, even though it was too late. But at least it's kind of out in the world now that it was an unfair secret.
So what was it like writing this book for you? Was it very emotional? Like, was it helpful for you in the end or not? Or tell me about it.
Absolutely. I mean, the book was written over about 14 years. Some of it I had actually started even before my mother was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. But then, right when she was diagnosed, I pretty much started keeping a journal. And the journal would keep veering off into these stories from the past that would make me kind of happy to think about and explore. But then luckily I had this practice when things did start to get pretty extreme and pretty challenging. So the book deals with I don't know, I mean, really difficult experiences, which also I don't want to give a spoiler, but when my mother got to the point of getting lost, wandering, and my sister was really not able to manage the situation, and I didn't realize that. So my sister was living with her, and I had to kind of step in. And luckily, I also had a yoga practice at the time. And so the book kind of shows me retreating to yoga, retreating to nostalgia, but also kind of stepping in and managing these incredibly difficult moments. So if I hadn't written that journal at the time, the book would look very different. If I had been writing that from retrospect, it would probably seem much less extreme, much more controlled. You know, the mind has a way of kind of normalizing these experiences. So I think it was hard for me when I was then finally putting together the edited version to go back over that material, which was pretty traumatic,
Yeah.
but I was really glad it was there. And then to go back in a more sane frame of mind and reshape it was very healing. Not that that was my purpose in writing the book or publishing it, but it did really give me the opportunity to see what had been happening from many different perspectives and finally to see how far along I had come in kind of processing the experiences.
No,
So,
I
yeah,
feel
I
like
hope that answers.
the scene in your book when your mother gets like a tooth abscess and you have to deal with that. I mean, it's just like it's like
Yeah,
nonstop, and it's like your
yeah.
shoulders must have been so heavy with everything just falling on them.
They were, but it's so interesting to me now to see so many people dealing with the same thing right now because so many people are remotely caring for elders in this very precarious situation and, you know, assisted livings and nursing homes where, you know, it's precarious right now. So, I mean, in a weird way, I know that Mary and Marisa both talked about releasing books at a time of a pandemic, which is not what we wanted or expected. But in some ways, I just feel like my book is so relevant for that caregiving angle, and then also just the coping and this idea that you know there's this new normal. You know, something bad happens. Like with my mother, it would be she got lost, and that was the new normal. That then she couldn't go outside, and somebody had to be watching her all the time. Well, and then the daycare provider quit. You know, the person who was coming over to go on walks with her quits, and you keep having to adjust to this new normal. It keeps getting worse and worse, and that's kind of what we've been dealing with COVID. And so finding ways to cope through yoga, meditation, even just our memories and enjoying our memories
It's
is so
true.
relevant right now.
My grandmother is 96 and is in like a nursing home, and they won't even she has like very mild dementia, like she gets very confused, but generally she's pretty much with it. But she like they're not even letting her walk the hallways. You know,
Oh, wow.
it's just and she just doesn't understand why she can't leave her apartment. I mean, it's and none of us can visit her, and
Yeah,
it's not like she's going to get on a Zoom call, right? It's confusing. So
I know. I
anyway,
know.
not that this is any way comparable, but just in having an elderly person in my life who I love so much and not being able to really care for them in the way that they might need or I might want. It's very
Yeah,
hard right now. And I'm
and so
sure
many.
everybody has this, right? Like everybody has someone in their lives they love. So
Yeah, yeah.
but I agree with you, and I think your book is a really beautiful book to read right now.
Thank you.
Particularly, and I love that it's an essay format. I love essays personally, so I love that they're short little bits you can consume, especially because some
Mhm.
people have had trouble with like maintaining long attention spans.
Mhm.
But this
Yeah,
is more like
yeah,
snippets. So I
yeah.
agree with you. Good assessment.
Thank you.
And it was really beautifully written.
Thank you so,
You're a really great writer. So.
thank you so much.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming on.
Thank you. It was
Can you
really
hold
great.
up your book again, The Memory Eater? Sorry, I don't have a hard copy. So great. Love it. And thanks for coming on. Thanks for coming on the show today.
Thank,
Okay,
thank
take care.
you. Bye
Bye-bye.
bye.